Wow, what a great group. And Delegate Philicorn, thank you so much for your kind introduction and also, probably more importantly, your service to your district, to your constituents, and to the Commonwealth. And I preside over the Senate. Please come in and make yourself. If y'all want to come in and find a seat, there's some other seats up here. That's great. But I preside over the Senate, but I keep an eye on what's going on down in the House as well. And Eileen is a real leader and has done so much good work. And in a time, Eileen, I think it's fair to say that it's been difficult for Democrats because we've been in the minority for a few years, and you've gotten some really good legislation through. And so she's there for the right reason. And I've been around a lot of folks in politics, and it seems like some of them go there for the wrong reason, and then some of them, once they get there, they forget why they're there. But Eileen is just doing wonderful work. So we need to keep her there and send us more. And on that note, I also thank you all for hosting this. What a wonderful gesture to open up your beautiful home and to be able to talk and listen to, I think, are what some very important issues and challenges we have, especially for individuals with disabilities. And that's what I really want to talk about today. And actually, I should rephrase that. That's what I want to listen to. As Eileen said, doctors tend to be listeners. We want to hear what's going on out there. And so please, feel free to express your concerns and your thoughts, and that's what it's all about. I do want to just make a couple points, and then we'll kind of get into the discussion of what we want to talk about. Connor, it is wonderful to see you with us this morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for I know adolescents like to sleep in sometimes, so we appreciate you getting up this morning and being with us, and thanks for all your good work you've done to help other folks with autism. So we really thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, it's always good to see you. I wanted to tell you just in a couple of things as we travel around Virginia, and we do put a lot of miles on the Prius, which is just outside. My wife's Prius, by the way, I always have to make that accurate. Pam is an occupational therapist, and I know I met someone else who was an occupational therapist, and I know we have a physical therapist, so we appreciate those of you that are here this morning that are providers. But anyway, the point I wanted to make is that as we travel around, we're seeing folks that I've never seen or met before that are really coming forward, and they're very enthusiastic. There's a lot of energy out there around Virginia, and I have to ask myself, why is that? What are we seeing? And my answer to it is that last year we watched a campaign in this country that was really based on hatred and bigotry and discrimination and fear and a lot of misinformation. And people are coming out and standing up and saying, this is not the country that I signed up for. It's not the Virginia that I know, and we're not going to accept this as the new normal. And so it's incumbent on all of us that we harness that energy and enthusiasm and connect the dots and make sure that we take it to the polls on election day. And these elections have tremendous consequences. And not only are the elections for the statewide electeds important, so we had a race for the governors, the lieutenant governor, and attorney general, but we need to give Eileen help in the House of Delegates, and then in 19, we need to help the Senate. And so there are 100 delegate seats up in 2017, and 17 of them are currently held by Republicans, and they were won by Hillary Clinton in 2016. So the good news is if we do our work, if we run a good coordinated campaign, we can help the House of Delegates and then the Senate. And I want to just make this point, and I didn't come to talk about politics a lot this morning, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. Eileen just said that I like to work, and I do work with people from both sides of the aisle. I don't have a monopoly on ideas, and I try to sit down with folks especially on the issues that we're going to talk about this morning, and help educate people and say this is why we need help for individuals with disabilities. And sometimes, despite using reason and logic, you can't change people's minds. And so when you can't change people's minds, you have to change their seats. And that's what we need to focus on in 2017, because we have been playing defense for far too long, Eileen. We need to get back on offense. We've been reactive rather than proactive. And I'm obviously a Democrat. I'm proud to be a Democrat, but I believe when we elect Democrats in Virginia, good things happen. So that's the plan for this year. So that's my ask of you all, this just to help out this year with that. Now, I grew up in a very rural part of Virginia over on the Eastern Shore. You can probably tell that I'm not from Northern Virginia. Right? I grew up on a small farm, and I'm a product of public schools. I went to Virginia Military Institute. I took a commission in the Army. I then went to medical school, and then I did 3 years of my pediatric training in San Antonio, which is where I met my wife, Pam. We actually have 2 children. Wes is a neurosurgeon down in Chapel Hill, and then he went to William & Mary, and then our daughter went to UVA, and she's a graphics design artist. And then I left San Antonio and came to Walter Reed. I did my chief residency at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, and then when I finished that, the balloon went up in Iraq, so I served during Desert Storm, and then came back to Norfolk with Pam and our 2 children in 1992. And so I started my own practice with 30 other pediatric subspecialists. We have grown that now. We have a little bit over 100 pediatric subspecialists, 5 pediatric neurologists, but we have cardiologists and pulmonologists, and you name it. We employ about 250 people. The other thing that I've done, and I just like to mention this sometime because it's really put my life in perspective. For the last 18 years, I've been the medical director of our Pediatric Hospice. It's called Edmark Hospice. It was named after Ed and Mark. It was started in a Presbyterian church about 40 years ago. These 2 individuals were terminally ill, and their families wanted to take care of them at home, but there was nobody to help out at home. So they started the hospice, and about 18 years ago, they came and asked me if I would be the medical director. And I'll just tell you that story very quickly. I went to the first meeting, and at that time the census was about 20 terminally ill children in Hampton Roads, and most of them had cancer. There were some genetic conditions, and I told Julie after the first meeting, I said, Julie, I appreciate you asking me to help out, but I said, this is too depressing. I can't keep doing this. And she said, well, we really need a medical director. And she said, if you come back next month, we'll help you, work through it. And so I did. And anyway, the rest is history. And so for 18 years on a volunteer basis, I have taken care of terminally ill children. And now our census, believe it or not, is around 70 individuals that I oversee and their families. And I just want to tell you that I hope nobody in here has ever had to lose a child, but I don't think there's anything more difficult than that in life. And so it has really helped put my life in perspective to have these families put their trust in me during those very difficult times of their life. And so Eileen knows this. Sometimes we have good days and bad days in Richmond, and people say, how do you deal with the politics? And I just say that, I've seen some things in my life, so I don't let these little things bother me. I look at the big picture. So I've taken care of a lot of children and their families with special needs, with disabilities. In my the time when I was seeing a lot of patients every day, and I have taken a leave of absence since Thanksgiving to run for governor. So currently I'm not seeing patients, but when I was seeing patients every day, I would take care of about probably 2 or 3 individuals with autism every day. Over 50% of my patients have disabilities. A lot of them have cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, learning disabilities, those types of things. So I have helped families with special needs, and that's why I want to hear what you all are experiencing, and then how folks like Eileen and I can help families, because And I was telling someone earlier, I think we were talking back there, it's really out of sight, out of mind for individuals that have never experienced, they've never had a family member that had disabilities, and it's tough. And unless we're able to go out and educate people and let them know, and when I say people, the folks that make policy, then we keep our words keep falling on deaf ears. So it's very important. I would be interested to hear some of you. I know we have some families with children that have autism or that are in the spectrum, and there's no question that there's a genetic component to it. I think that's fair to say. But is there something that's triggering the genes? Because I really think that I'm seeing more individuals in the spectrum than I did 30 years ago, and I'd be curious to hear some of what your all's thoughts on that are as well. As you know, good folks like Eileen worked very hard. It wasn't that long ago that the insurance companies fought. They wouldn't cover individuals to get one diagnosed and then to get treatment with ABA. So that's been a challenge, and we've made some progress. The other thing I want to hear about that is really important to us is your all's access through the community service boards to Medicaid waivers. And there have been some changes with Medicaid waivers, but we still have a significant waiting list, and that's unacceptable. The last thing I want to just say before I open this up, and I am looking forward to listening to y'all, a lot of these things come down to funding. Sometimes people say, well, Ralph, you got all these ideas, but how are you going to fund it? Which I think is a fair question. But I will tell you that with the Affordable Care Act, as a doctor, there are some very good things about the Affordable Care Act. Are there some things that we can improve upon? Absolutely. But any type of legislation, a large piece of legislation that's passed like that, there's always tweaking to the legislation. But it's been a political football in Washington. And so a couple weeks ago, after 7 years, believe it or not, of the Congress saying they were going to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, what they put on the table was an embarrassment. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help you. It just is a political game for them. And it's another reason that we need to make sure that we elect people that are like-minded. But part of the Affordable Care Act, which looks like it's here to stay for a while, is Medicaid expansion. And so Medicaid expansion is designed, we all, when we pay our taxes, our federal taxes, that money goes to Washington to support the Affordable Care Act. And all we're trying to do is bring that money back to Virginia to help 400,000 working Virginians. And I would underline the word working. These are Virginians who may have 1, 2, or 3 jobs, excuse me, but because the cost of health care have risen a lot faster than people's salaries, they can't afford coverage. So where do they go when their families get sick? They go to the emergency room. And there's a time and a place for the emergency room, but it's not where preventive care takes place, and it's very expensive. And so morally, the right thing for us to do is make sure that these individuals can go see a doctor or a provider when they need to. Nobody should be one medical illness away from financial ruin. It's immoral. The next step that you all need to realize is that every day that we don't expand Medicaid in Virginia, we're not only leaving on the table, but we're giving to other states who we compete with, by the way, over $5 million a day. Since January of 14, when we were eligible to expand Medicaid, we have given over $10 billion with a B dollars to other states. And so when someone asks me, how do you want to pay for it? I said, well, let's do the right thing and expand Medicaid and bring that money back to Virginia. So I tell people, you might appreciate this, I tell them that any business person that wants to give their competitors $5 million a day, I tell them as a neurologist they ought to have their heads examined. So that's where we are. So talk to me a little bit. So we need to expand Medicaid if we're going to help individuals like you. So when someone knocks on your door and says they'd like your vote, I'd ask them, how do you feel about Medicaid expansion? If they say, oh, we can't deal with that, I said, well, you all have a nice day. And then I also would ask them how they feel about nonpartisan redistricting. we need to make sure that you're able to pick your leaders rather than politicians picking the voters. And that will happen in 2021. So it's important that people are on board to take the politics out of how we redraw the lines. You all have heard about gerrymandering, right? That's what it's all about. People want to stay in power. So those are just a couple questions I'd start with when someone calls you or knocks on your door. So anyway, talk to me a little bit. I know we have some families with autism. I want to hear what it's like if you have a child that, you know the story, the child is doing fairly well, and then around 12, 18 months, something happens and they stop talking, they stop looking you in the eye, and you know something's different. And so how is it to be able to get in to see a provider like myself, and then once you can get in to see the provider, how is it going with the therapy? Are you able to get reimbursed for ABA, and are you able to find someone that is trained in ABA?